Good evening. I'm so glad you've come. Today I'd like to read you a story. It's a story that I wrote called Tansy, and it's about a prairie witch. The sun crept over the horizon, the first rays piercing the sky. I sighed deeply and picked my way through the wild rye dominating the field. It grows tall enough to reach my chest in some spots. The grasshoppers click and jump, crashing into my skirt. I watch the grass sway in the wind. It looks like shining green waves and sounds like a mother gently soothing her crying child. Shh. I keep my eyes peeled for the pops of yellow and white that I need, and notice the moon is still up, resisting the encroaching sunlight. I think to myself, "Good morning, sister." I remember when I was about 9 and staying up late in the living room of a dark bungalow. As the hours ticked by, I lost all sense of time. Looking out the front window, I watched the sky turn from a vivid azure to black, and I began to wonder if my mother would come back at all. I rubbed the smooth tails of the ribbon I'd earned earlier at school and looked at the clock. The hour hand ticked past 11. A sudden jarring snap of a key turning the lock sent a jolt of adrenaline up my tiny spine. I ran to the door. My mother looked weary. Her eyes were bloodshot from overwork and not enough rest, but oddly, she didn't look surprised to see me up. "Mommy, I got a ribbon!" "You should be in bed." Her voice was quiet and thin. "I know, but look!" I showed her the ribbon again. The second she fulfilled my wish by glancing at it, I moved to my next topic. "I wish I had a sister," I told her. Having watched Practical Magic a few nights earlier, I was still thinking about the connection between Jill and Sally. I was jealous. Then my mother surprised me by leading me outside onto the front stoop. She pointed to a plump silver moon and said, "Do you see that?" I nodded. "She's your sister, and will always be there for you." Surrounded by the music of grouse and chickadees, I stare at my celestial sister. The feeling of kinship between us strong as ever. She looks so big, feels like I could almost touch her. "Come closer," I whisper. Crash into the grass and pull the ocean up over the mountains to drown us all. I feel somewhat supported by her presence as I carry out my grave task. I run my fingers through the rye as if it were the hair of a friend awaiting a braid, and sigh again. I spot some yarrow and plantain growing along the path and think to myself, there's not enough yarrow in the entire prairie to close this wound, nor enough plantain to heal these scars. I took a wild carrot tincture every few hours for nearly the last week, but I still haven't menstruated. The appointment with the uterus vacuum looms ever closer. I decided to turn toward my faith, toward the magic of these fields for deliverance. I drag my feet as I search, but soon enough I find the first annoyingly cheerful cluster of yellow blossoms. She stands tall, almost 4 feet, her fern-like leaves lending some elegance to her overall appearance, while her button-shaped flowers appear whimsical. Their power is anything but. I gently stroke her stem, determining whether or not she wishes to help me today. Then I remove the knife from my bag. I grip it with intention as the violent orange of a rising sunbeam catches the blade. I cut the first of many, but never all. These plants don't belong to me. I am only borrowing their power for a time. I place her and her family gingerly into my muslin herb bag. I resolve to move to a different part of the valley to seek out my next ingredient when I come across a dry creek bed with a rocky bank and hear a strange, slippery sound. Curiosity drives me to investigate. I peer under the rocks and see a mass of black and yellow snakes undulating and pulsating, their muscular, flexible bodies twining together, the blind aggression of it, the forcefulness, a memory thrust into the foray of my mind. A hairy hand like a vice grip on my wrist, turning my face away in fear, shame, revulsion. My nostrils flared as I endured, forced into submission, my agency stripped. A thought came to my mind like a life vest thrown to a person drowning in an ocean storm. It was an old bit of Slavic magic. A zagovar, a spoken charm to endure a torture. Like the dead in the earth don't feel anything, so in the same way may I not feel any atrocities, any tortures. I mumbled these words almost without meaning to. Some ancestor or benevolent spirit must have been offering me what little they could in my time of need, for as soon as the last word passed my lips, a strange numbness began to encroach, and my mind broke free of my defiled body. Blinking, I looked at the rocks again, and the snakes. I think about the female snake at the center of that mating ball, writhing, on the verge of suffocation and squirming from one crushing grasp to another. Nowhere to turn, no escape possible. Nature makes plenty of horrible things. The zagovar passed my lips again, and this time I point toward the writhing ball, intending my focus toward the female. I feel a rock in my solar plexus as I whisper, like the dead in the earth don't feel anything, so in the same way may you not feel any atrocities, any tortures. I stare at the snake ball for longer than is reasonable, frozen, unable to break away from the horror. Eventually my breath returns to me and I begin to walk up the rocky creek bed. Soon I can hear the river. I head toward the sound, eyes peeled for a clutch of white blossoms. I remove the strap of my water skin from my shoulder and prepare to fill it in the river. As I continue to approach, I think to myself, I might find some water hemlock on the bank and end my suffering permanently. And sure enough, there I find the next plant on my list, 2 umbrella-shaped clusters of small white flowers. The sister plants look alike, and they are offering me a choice. A blotchy purple stem and a swift end, or a tutu and hope. What if my more complicated mixture doesn't work? And then what if it's too late? I don't want to submit to another invasive and painful experience to fix the first one, but if the herbs don't work, I won't have a choice. The hemlock removes all problems while solving none. I look around at this beautiful valley. The misty outline of ancient mountains lines the horizon on one side, and the clusters of trees all around me. I absent-mindedly touch my Devana pendant and look at my sister again. Swallowing hard, with tears streaming down my cheeks, I cut the carrot stalks, and I'm careful to collect all the seeds. One final glance back at the hemlock, and I decide to cut one. I'm almost sure I won't be taking her potent and very final medicine today, but somehow it feels better to know that I could. I fill my skin with water and splash my face. My supplies clank and jangle in an unreasonably annoying way as I bend forward. I remove my pack, which contains the cauldron, mortar and pestle, scissors, lighter, and my drum. I take off my knife belt and my herb bag and place them all on the bank. The water is cold, but not icy. My feet sink slightly into the clay of the riverbed, and the smooth river rocks press into my feet like reflexology. The river is soaking my skirt. I stand there and feel at home. I am one with the river. I am one with the clay. I am every smooth little rock, and they are me. If death comes riding up on his white steed at this moment, I will say, take me. Make me one with this land forever. I want to become ancient. I want to watch the human lives pass over me in the blink of my all-seeing eye. But he doesn't come, so I pull myself out of the current and head toward my tree. She's a tall and stately birch who grows on top of a grassy knoll. I grab dry sticks from the ground as I walk. I call her the Alatir, the navel of the world. Through her, all realms are connected. Life and death are only a step apart if you know how to walk. Once there, I work quickly, unpacking my tools and starting the fire. It is the fastest and best fire I've ever built. My hands fly, guided by some outside force, and as soon as I strike the match and toss it in, I can tell this fire will hold. It is strong. I set up the cauldron so it hangs within the hottest part of the flames and fill it with water from the river. I roll out my muslin on the ground and begin to snip the flowers into small pieces. I watch the shadow of the leaves above shift, creating a pattern on the fabric. I listen to the voice of the wind in the trees. Isn't there a word for that? For the sound of wind in trees? Sitharism? They shift with the breeze and their pattern changes like a Rorschach. Usually I consider this to be one of the ways nature communicates with us cunning women. But today I'm too tired and stressed to interpret their ancient language. Next, I pour the carrot seeds into the mortar and bash at them with the pestle. The first bash feels so good I do it harder and harder until carrot seeds fly everywhere and I'm screaming at the sky. My rage melts into sobs and I dutifully ground the remaining seeds in a counterclockwise circle. This is a banishment after all. When the water is boiling, I scoop up the tansy flowers and leaves with my hands and drop them into the steaming cauldron. Then I gingerly pick up the fabric on which I prepared them and tip the smaller remaining bits in as well. Next, I take the mortar in both hands and stare at the crushed seeds. I glance at the hemlock sitting whole, propped against the bark of the tree. You'd better work this time, I tell the contents of the mortar, as if they'd respond to threats, and tip them into the cauldron. I sit under the alatir for what feels like a long time. I become entranced, staring at my potion. Bubbles form, grow, and pop. I tell myself, this decoction holds the sacred power of choice and liberation. I strain the liquid into the clay cup I brought. It is the first cup I've made that doesn't have a crack in it, and it has an ombre red glaze. It seems fitting. I bring the cup to my lips to drink and glance at the horizon. The entire sky is dusty lavender. A female moose stands on the earthen ledge, shockingly close. I hadn't heard her approach, and just over her shoulder is the bright, waning moon. I drink and breathe deep, visualizing the lining of my uterus shedding. The divine feminine is all around me, I tell myself. We are working together. The moose stays close, munching away as I finish my tea. I pull out my drum. She's made of moose hide, the water element, women's medicine. I stroke her face and think about how my people have worked with the Cree natives of this land for many generations. This is a Cree drum. The lacing style represents community. I begin to play. I beat along with my heart. I beat to match the wind. I beat the drum until I stopped thinking about regaining my power and realized it had never left me. I beat the drum until I can feel the vibration of its magic in my bones, in my soul. I am one woman who carries forth what traditions I can, but I am also one thread in the web of life, one part of the whole, and therefore the whole. I repack my things and check for the moose. She is gone now, having offered me the support I needed. The moon has set as well, and the sun fills the prairie. I glance back at the hemlock, blotchy purple stem and mournful white flowers leaning innocently against the tree. I turn to leave the valley, resolved to stand in my power, knowing I cannot be stopped, feeling like myself for the first time since the rape, and then, as the confidence of my stride increases, I feel something wet, and I know the magic has worked. My moon time has come at last.